tēnā koutou katoa. I'm Anna Brown, this is Karl, Kane and Joe Bailey. So this is us. You can of course find more information about us online, but what's important to know is that we all work here in the College of Creative Arts at Massey and in various capacities. We teach together, we work and have worked in Open Lab. I used to be the director, Karl's worked as a consultant and Joe as a senior designer, and we all collaborate on external facing and socially engaged projects. In the interests of time, Karl and I are going to be doing the talking. Joe is here as an integral part of the team, and I'm going to be talking more because Karl has laryngitis.
But an interesting point on this apologising for being non-designers, we're just sitting there, Anna and I realised that all three of us actually come from a non-design background. So two BAs, one with the New Zealand Army, Ngāti Tūmatuinga, and a science degree. Yeah. Before we came into design.
So we're going to respond to the 5 questions posed to us by Andrew for this session, using 3 projects we have collectively completed to draw together some overarching ideas and thoughts. So here are the 3 projects.
So this is the Design Democracy Project, which I have the pleasure of leading a wonderful team of design researchers. We have a sort of a kaitiatatanga, a real interest in how we can use the tools, the techniques, the networks, the services we have at our disposal to create a better citizenship, so a 21st century citizenship. So how we can harness the tools we have at our disposal to make democracy more direct, more participatory, more democratic. We have a particular way we like to work, and with all of our with all of our work, we love to bring users into the process right from the very beginning. So in terms of defining what the problems are that we're trying to solve. So we don't really have a sort of paternalistic approach to it. We bring people in and stakeholders in from the outset and work with them both in terms of defining the problems and the opportunities, but then also in realising design execution. Because a lot of what we find is when we do that, we break a lot of myths down. For example, this sort of myth of the apathetic youth, the apathetic young New Zealander, which when we actually have a look at how people respond, in this case the Christchurch earthquake, student army shifting liquefaction by hand, we know that they're not apathetic. But what we found is that they're disconnected from the tools and techniques and processes. We've got an adversarial system designed in a different century and a different continent, a different part of the world, that doesn't resonate with what they want to, how they want to build or advance or design their future. So working alongside the participants, alongside the stakeholders as co-designers, we find we challenge a lot of assumptions from the outset.
This is the second project. It's called LAWA, Land, Air, Water, Aotearoa, and it's a web tool designed with the purpose of making scientific information on New Zealand's environment available to the public in an easily comprehensible, credible and trustworthy way. It's a collaboration between the country's 16 regional councils and unitary authorities, the Cawthron Institute, Massey University and the Ministry for the Environment. LAWA is a world first in terms of making national water quality information accessible on a single platform. Currently, it has around 3,000 unique visitors a month. As designers engaged in LAWA, we had to be adaptable, pragmatic, and wear multiple hats, including that of the end user. We were a persistent, although not always successful, voice in pushing for a dialogue with all stakeholders. We asked why questions of both the scientists and the policymakers, and seeking to make everything as simple as it can be, but not simpler. This 3-year and continuing project is lean, pragmatic and inclusive. It utilises design as facilitator approach, not the designer as hero approach, tradition imported from Europe. And this is the 3rd project we're talking about. This project saw the Government New Zealand project team at the Department of Internal Affairs approach Open Lab with the problem of a 3-second bounce rate on the original gov.nz site. The big issues citizens had when engaging with the original site were around trust. It didn't look like government, it didn't look like New Zealand, and it didn't have any people present. And while the original architecture worked like the gov.uk site, it lacked a visual New Zealand vernacular. i.e. incorporating typefaces with macrons that respond to bilingual sites. And this idea that it wasn't replacing Google as a search engine, rather it was guiding users. As David Trubridge said earlier, design needs to speak of its place. And these are the kind of people that we engage with in these projects. The teams are diverse. They bring together youth and experience, civil servants, designers, managers and mentors. And it's not in government, but it's with government. In addition to these completed projects, we have a number of projects in process. Flagpost, a design-led alternative to the government's flag consideration project. Designing for All, exploring inclusive design practice in New Zealand's design community, and the Grow Waitaha, Christchurch, the Greater Christchurch Educational Renewal Project. So those are the projects that we're going to use to come to some conclusions. So, Andrew asked us 5 questions. The first was, how are New Zealand universities utilising research and design thinking approaches to create social, economic and other impacts? What are these impacts and how can they be characterised?
So the slides on the screen at the moment talk to one kind of impact, which is the mainstream sort of mediated impact. Yeah, people are talking about this on Campbell Live and on News. We're getting used as central planks and arguments in Parliament to change laws, hashtag Red Peak. But also the impact is most importantly for the user, in true user-centered design. And so what we see with these projects, with these executions, is they remove barriers, they provide greater access. So those barriers might be plutocratic, technocratic, geographic. So we're providing better access for the user. We are creating a dialogue loop. So rather than government talking at an audience, we're creating conversations with an audience. So we're putting a feedback loop into a lot of these systems. And I guess what we're most sort of proud of is the usefulness. So this isn't designed as myth-making or rhetoric. This is designed as creating tools that have a use value for an audience, and we're most sort of proud of the use value. So we're seeing people finding use and engaging with these tools in a useful way.
The second question Andrew asked us was, how are these approaches to research and design characterised? So the first one, I guess, is that it's all about partnerships, and those partnerships are with government and local government, iwi, industry and NGOs. And as you can see from this image, it also is characterised by many long, sometimes tense, meetings around board tables. Importantly, these projects also leverage the freedoms that the third space of the university allow us. It's not government and it's not industry, it's something other, and we're doing it here. It's also about designing appropriately. It's not novelty value, but it's use value. Of course, it's an iterative process. It's about designing with prototypes and user testing as much as we could, as many times as we could. It's often about design by stealth. We do what we do without calling notice to it. And it's also the designers acting as the why voice at the table. And sometimes we have to play dumb. But currently these projects are characterised via informal relationships and networks, and the engagements are very ad hoc and unstructured. And what are the barriers to undertaking these approaches? There is, of course, a tendency to revert to the tick box approach, led by how the tool will be communicated from the top by managers and not how it will be used from the bottom by the public. There is, of course, a fear of failure, which is unfortunately rampant in the government space. There is cost and time and trust, and understanding the value of design that is about design-led thinking, strategy, user engagement, not just design, fighting that tendency to be known as purely an output.
So in terms of the being brought into we refer to sitting at the grown-ups table, and I think the biggest change that we've seen is we're now seeing design sitting at the grown-ups table, and it's something which we're able to do more and more because we're building the track record of exemplars where we can demonstrate our worth. And I think we've needed to be quite humble in doing that. We've needed to sort of, as was said earlier in the day, do the doing rather than the telling, and sort of prove our worth. And we're starting to see metrics. For example, in the Design and Democracy project, the Horizon Research produced a poll which showed that 30,000 new voters were engaged to vote through our work, and returning that at an average of $1.50 per voter. So we're starting to see metrics which are quite compelling. But I think that as well as the sitting at the grown-ups table, we're now seeing the designer as strategist. So we're starting to, rather than be pure service providers responding to a brief, we're sitting at the top of the chain, helping create the brief, write the strategy, and inform the strategy.
It's also, I think for all of us, a really fulfilling space to be sitting in, where we've moved on from being designers of things to designers of social impact. And then the big question that Andrew put to us is, how are New Zealand universities utilising research and design thinking approaches to create social, economic and other impacts? And based on those projects that we've shown you, I think we've come to the conclusions that these are some of the core characteristics that sum it up. It's about being design-led and user-centred. They are all collaborative projects which have benefits and drawbacks. They're grounded in rigorous research, both qualitative and quantitative, and they're able to mobilise diverse stakeholders and voices, including the staff, the students, the users and the citizens, to enable different perspectives. It's important to know that it's also designing for a near future context. We don't really know what the world's going to be like, even in 2 to 5 years. So we're trying to preempt what's happening, and we're challenging assumptions. And what are the future opportunities? There is the development, what we hope is the development of some more formalised partnerships, and not just a service delivery model. We think now is the time to build on momentum and leverage the trust that we've earned from these early exemplars. We think it's time to build capability in the pipeline with government and the public sector in this tertiary space. And at our end, we're working on developing a curriculum that produces students that are capable and engaged in wanting to work in the public sector and in government. Our vision is to keep asking New Zealand citizens for their input, from defining the problem through to executing the solutions. And I guess our final ask is that because we sit in a university and it's about research, we want you to come and work on these projects with us and make it a true collaboration.
The door is open.